Good afternoon, evening, morning, whatever it is where you are. It's Friday. No, it's Thursday still. Thursday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Macro Talk 2. This is Alan. Welcome, everybody. Glad you could make it. I see everybody is here, everybody in the world, all the way from, well, I'm not allowed to look over there, am I? But everywhere, from everywhere. Good to see everybody. A lot of Europeans here today. Great. We've got a lot to cover. 20 things, actually. It's probably more like 25 when we get finished. But a couple of things first, just to let you know what's going on. There's some exciting stuff afoot. There's no Presume this weekend, but I am taking a group of people rambling with cameras on Saturday morning. Who is going? I don't know. Nobody's signed up yet, but there will be a group by Saturday, I'm sure. So if you want to come on Saturday, come take pictures and go find interesting things to photograph. It'll probably be northwest Florida, around Pensacola, near the university. There's a wetlands there. I think that's where I'm going to go. And anybody who wants to come is welcome. And I'm dead serious about that. Just let me know. Okay, this is the last call for the Spring-Summer Workshop in Atlanta. It's a macro workshop that Bud and I are putting on. And so far, we don't have enough commitment to proceed with the planning. So this is the last call for that. I put out a call on Tuesday and one again today, and that will be it. And then we'll reconvene and look at something in the fall. So let me know if you're interested. Now's the time. The competition, the results are going to be out probably on Sunday because I'm going to be busy on Saturday. But the judging will happen shortly after the last entry is in on Friday night, which is tomorrow night, which means you've got to go photograph an insect. I want you to do that. It's important. It helps you get better. It's one of the things I'm talking about today. A couple of things about next month's competition. I'm going to give you the theme right now. I gave it out on Tuesday as well. It's difficult, it's complicated, and you're going to have to think about it. It's just not easy. But first, there's also a new rule. The new rule is, if you have ever won my competition, if you have ever come first or tied for first, from this point forth, you can only submit one entry unless that rule is waived for some reason. Maybe at the end of the year competition will waive it. But for the regular monthly competition, our expert photographers who win things, one picture. Everybody else, two. Deal? It's a gentle handicap that I think may make a difference. So the theme is an abstract picture. It does not have to be a macro photograph, but it must evoke a macro subject. Okay? I gave some examples that only confused people on Tuesday, so I won't do that again. But if you photograph anything, it doesn't matter how big it is, but if it makes the viewer look at that and say, oh, that looks just like a so-and-so, or that reminds me of something small that we would photograph, then there you go. You're onto something. You may abstract. You may composite to your heart's delight. Do whatever compositing you want to do. And I encourage you to please use the title. The title is a gift you get given every competition. It's a way to make the judge smile and understand your picture better. And it always helps. A good title, especially a short one, always helps. So I would use it for this competition because you're going to need to. Because if you're doing an abstract and it's not clear, the title can help. So it's difficult. If you need help, ask a more experienced photographer to help you, because this process is about getting better. And difficult competitions make you get better. I'm going to very, very briefly mention the conversation that's been going on about ways to level the playing field. Some of the newcomers are put off from entering the competition because we have people who are apparently always winning. They're not, but they do show up at the top quite a lot because they're good. And we can't lose that. We don't ever want to lose that. We don't want to have a competition that everybody wins because everybody's mediocre. No. We need to get better to catch up with those guys that are beating us all the time. handicapping them a little bit is fair, and that's what we're going to do. But still, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that the competition is the best way for us to get better. It is, and it's also fun. Also make new friends doing it. Let me tell you about the most exciting thing that's happened in the world this week. This is the whole world, and it's just in time for the lawnmowers to start. It appears they've cut my grass about 4 times this week. I don't know what that's all about, but anyway, it's going to be noisy. Discord. Wow. This has been quite the thing this week. Larry, who you know well, you may know him as Tangent, but he's also called Larry, and Patrick, who helped him, and me, who just sat there and occasionally made smart aleck remarks to keep myself engaged, have done remarkable things in the last week to create some forums and gathering places over on Discord that will suit old people like me. You've just got to check it out. It's new and it's different and it's exciting, and it's going to bring together all of the various bits of this ragtag empire we have here. The Walls app, the website, our Patreon group, everything is going to kind of glom together now around these communities that we're setting up in Discord. If that sounds all confusing and you don't know what's going on, just go to Discord. And if you see Larry or Patrick, tell them they're brilliant, tell them thank you, and tell them they're handsome if you want. But that third one is entirely optional. The first 2 are not. You have to tell them that. Okay? So thank you, Larry. Thank you, Patrick. It's going to make all the difference in the world, and it will allow me to put content out that everybody who wants to can find and see and enjoy or not enjoy. Probably the latter. Top tips. We've got 20 of them, and at least 20 of them, and they could be categorized as field macro tips or insect tips or studio tips. They could be very specific kind of tips like advice, practical advice, or they could be more meta, like big picture things. And I didn't split them up. I didn't want to, because they came to me in a certain order, and I think it's the order that makes the most sense. But when I write the article on this, and there'll be an article about this so that these things will be written down one day, and you'll find it on Discord as well as everywhere else, it'll be in a more rational order. But before we do that, before we get to tip number 1, because this is tied up in multiple tips, what I'm going to show you is a picture. I want to show you a picture. It's a picture of Willie. Willie is a weevil, a friend of mine, who has not been doing very well because he's done a lot of overtime in the last couple of months. And, well, you be the judge. This is Willie, and I'm showing him to highlight a couple of points that I think are important. Number 1 is I was getting ready to give you a tip. I'll hold off on the tip. This is my first serious attempt to use Croil that my friend Bud has been trying to get me to use for about a year now to revitalize a bug's eye. And I photographed this bug literally in the last 20 minutes and processed it and edited it and got it up on this screen with only seconds to spare. This bug was headed for the trash this morning, and I am absolutely flabbergasted by what a good job this deadly substance has done to this eye. Croil is this penetrating oil that Bud discovered that has just really done a remarkable job of giving this guy his eye back. I'll show you all the pictures of this fella because there's something else I did that was interesting with him. But let me tell you one last thing because it ties into what we're talking about today. I don't have a Mitutoyo 10 times objective. I want to get one day I will. But until then, you know what this was shot with? This is a 10 times magnification shot. It was shot with my Mitutoyo 20. And it was shot on short focus, and that's important because I'm going to show you that setup, because it's one of the things that I want to encourage you to do with these tips is to try new stuff. And I must say that I've done this with other objectives but never with the 20, and I was absolutely flabbergasted with how sharp this was, all things considered. It's a very short stack, but what I did it with was this simple setup here. This is an old donated 100mm macro lens with a Mitutoyo 20 times objective on the front. That's it. And because it's 100mm, that's half the focal length that you would normally use with that objective to shoot at infinity, and it gives you basically a very, very sharp 10x objective. The same thing works if you have a 10x objective. It makes a very, very sharp 5x, sharper than a 5x. That's the key. So yeah, I was really excited by this picture. It's why I wanted to show it to you. Should we get on with the tips, because we've got lots of tips to cover? Any messages I need to be aware of, gentlemen? I'm speaking to my bouncers. I call them gentlemen, even though Amy's one of them, and she is not definitely a gentleman. Good evening from Alistair. Good evening, Alistair. Sorry I didn't get back to you quicker on that. So let's begin. Make the most of your field time. If, like me, your life is crowding in and you have so much to do and so little time that you're getting out only occasionally, make the most of it. Do things like going to where the bugs are. Sometimes we go places that may be a little closer or a little less difficult to get to, but that's also where the bugs aren't. So plan your field time to be maximally effective. And one of the things that I would do for that is plan to go early in the morning or late in the evening when the bugs are less active, easier to photograph, easier to find, and usually there's a better variety. So plan your field time carefully, and I think you'll find that you enjoy your hobby more and you get better pictures. Certainly if you go out really, really early when there's dew and stuff like that, you can get some stunning pictures of bugs that are still fast asleep. Sleeping bees are always fun to photograph, as are dragonflies when you can find them. So shoot early, shoot late, plan your trips. Tip number 2. When you can, shoot in the studio with live insects. Something we hardly ever talk about, something I don't do because of the time investment that's involved of creating habitat and keeping insects alive in the studio. Something my friend Rick does well and does a lot. It is a really good way to expand your horizons, create new and interesting photographs by photographing live insects or live bugs in a controlled environment. So think about that. That's a useful tip to have. Here's a meta tip. I'm not going to give you the numbers of these, by the way, because I know I'm going to run over, but never be the first or the last to adopt a new technique or technology. There's a reason for that. If you're the first, there's a good chance you're getting on a bandwagon you don't need to be on. If you're the third person in the whole country to get a half-frame camera to do your macro with, you may waste 2 years of your life before you discover that that's a useless thing to do macro with. Wait until some people have adopted it and tested it for you. Then jump on the bandwagon. Don't wait till everybody else has, because if you're last getting on, there's nothing left for you to discover. You can't be part of the excitement. So think about that. When something new comes out, hold off, delay gratification. Let other people spend their money and discover that it's useless. Pick it up when a few other people have. Never be the first, never be the last. Always carry a diffuser in the field. Always. Not in your bag in the trunk of the car either. In your pocket, in your backpack, on the camera, have a diffuser. It can be nothing more, and frequently with me it is, nothing more than a rolled up piece of whatchamacallit, Kevlar. No, that's not it. Mylar in your pocket. It's just a lifesaver. You can take a picture that was going to be okay, Great subject, like a robber fly that I photographed the other day. You've seen it so many times, I won't show it again, but the yellow robber fly is absolutely gorgeous. And I just am kicking myself that I didn't have a way to diffuse that, because I was teaching that day and didn't take my diffuser out. I was carrying too much other stuff. Always have your diffuser. It makes all the difference in the world, just to take the harsh edge off the sun. If you're new, this will probably sound pretty obvious, and if you're old to macro, it'll sound even more obvious, but use a macro lens. Use the best macro lens that you can afford to buy, and use it in the field with a focal length of between 90 and 200 millimeters. There's a reason they're invented in those focal lengths. It allows you to be far enough away from your subject not to scare everything off. It's a more comfortable distance to use. Almost all the flagship macro lenses are in that focal length range, and they are going to be the best technical lenses for macro photography. There are so many other things that you can do using diopters, reversing lenses, extension tubes. All that stuff's good and well, but if you want to get well fast, get well. If you want to get better fast, if you want to get well fast, drink fluids and get lots of rest. But if you want to get better fast, use a macro lens and get the best one that you can afford for your camera system. Seriously. If you're in the studio, it doesn't matter what focal length it is, but you want something short enough that you don't have to be on the other side of the room to use it. So a 55 maybe, or an 85, or a 90 would be perfect. But in the field, get yourself a 100mm macro lens if you can. Studio lighting. Let's be honest here. I'm getting ready to drop the video on Optilux, and there is no doubt about it. That is the best continuous lighting solution I've ever used, hands down. It's absolutely superb. The more I used it, the better I got with it, until my pictures were indistinguishable from pictures I'd taken with flash. Even though I had to do things differently to get them, you can get there with them. It's fantastic. But if you're starting out, or even if you're not, even if you've been doing this for a long time and you've got a mishmash of stuff in the studio, decide on what you want to use for your lighting and what you want to get good at. Buy it and use it. I would say that right now the best lighting for the studio is MF12 flashes multiple. That's it. There is no alternative that I found that is any better, that is not also more expensive. Not the case in the field. I still believe that the best flash for macro in the field is actually the R1C1 from Nikon. I think it's just better because it has ITTL that really works. So the tip though is studio light is everything. 90% of the quality of your picture is coming from the light. You know what I saw last night? I saw the best macro photograph that I have seen this year and probably last as well. And I see a lot of macro photographs. Who took it? Rick took it. It's a picture, it's a rude picture actually. It's a picture of two crane flies in flagrante delicto, and it was photographed with a short focus technique using an objective. But it was the sharpest picture, the cleanest photograph I have seen in forever. And 90% of that was his lighting. He wouldn't agree with that, but that's the fact. So pick a light source, learn how to use it, and make that your go-to solution. All right. Focus stack. Oh, don't use studio flashes. I should say that again. I know I say it a lot. Unless you have a whole group of Einsteins, and even then they're too big. Don't use them. Don't use studio flashes. They don't do a good job in macro. Focus stacking. All right. Pay attention to what you give Zerine to work on. I took some photographs yesterday that I was very excited about. I wanted to discuss them with Rick, and I stacked both of them, and they both came out horrible. And why? They came out horrible because I had included in both stacks a picture that was either a test shot in one case or from the wrong stack in the other. And because they were the same, largely the same photograph, only with a slight shift in perspective, they were both ruined, absolutely ruined. All of that work of setting it up, doing the shot, doing the stack, and making the final image was just wasted because the pictures are unusable. Why? Because I didn't bother to look carefully at the first and last pictures. And that's really all you have to do. When you're trimming your stack, pause and make sure that you're putting into Zerine what you want in. I do the same thing periodically with a black frame. Not that I have very many. I may have only a couple a year now, but they will somehow still get into the stack, and they'll waste all that time. So try to be very careful about that. Make sure that you're putting the best stuff you have from that image sequence into Zerine, and you will be rewarded by better pictures when you do that. Insect behavior is there for a reason. It's for you to learn it. If you can learn how an insect behaves and incorporate that into your photographs, you'll start taking photographs that reflect your knowledge of the insect's behavior. This sounds really very woo, I understand, but if you are photographing a dragonfly, right? When a dragonfly lands on its perch, it will fly away again if you take a picture too close, but it will usually come back. That's its behavior. It's very territorial. It wants to hunt from the same spot because it's comfortable there. When it first lands, its wings are back and its head is up, and it looks really nice, and it's a great way to photograph it. But that's actually not a hunting dragonfly. That's a resting dragonfly. And it's not nearly as interesting a picture as a few seconds later when it moves its wings forward and puts them down, pointed, and the head swivels to the side a bit. That's when he's hunting. And when you can get that shot and you have cleared his wing by getting a little bit forward of the perch, all of a sudden you've got a photograph that is much more interesting, much more dynamic, and will stand out from the crowd because everybody else is photographing dragonflies when they're resting. Get them when they're hunting, and you won't know that unless you watch them. So watch your insects, learn what they're doing, why they're doing it, and then use that knowledge to get the best pictures you can, and it will help. It will be obvious to the viewer that you know what you're doing. All right. Okay. Help somebody else understand this stuff. It doesn't matter whether they do or not. It doesn't matter whether they get any better or not. But if you make it a habit, if you make it part of your macro lifestyle to pass some of this stuff on, especially when you learn something cool or interesting, pass that on and you will learn it better. You will know it better. You will know exactly what you're supposed to be doing instinctively after you've taught a couple of people how to do it. And that is a very powerful tool. It's also a very powerful glue for the community. So look for opportunities to help people, because if you've been doing this 3 days, you've been doing it 3 days longer than the guy that just walked into our live stream and doesn't know what's going on but thinks it sounds cool. Help somebody. Discord is the place to do that, and it's only going to become more so the place to do it after these changes kick in. So let's talk about backgrounds, both in the studio and outside. A background is an absolutely crucial context for a macro photograph. Sometimes it's the only context we have. I love macro pictures of beautiful insects against white or black backgrounds, especially the textbook examples of wonderfully crystal clear pictures on clean backgrounds. But most of the time when we're doing field macro and when we're emulating field macro in the studio, we're using backgrounds. And I think we have a tendency to be very passive and dismissive about backgrounds. We may have one or two pieces of colored paper that we use as a background, and it's one or the other, and it's the same one usually for 4 months at a time. Try to think more in terms of colors, contrasts, and habitats when you're setting up a backdrop in the studio. I've done quite a few videos on this, but you can go to a hobby shop and you can buy a big packet of various colored foams, little sheets of light foam that are just a dizzying array of colors. You can do the same with cards that they make for all kinds of purposes, for cutting out and stuff like that. The colors are just bewildering how many there are. And you can find these with patterns, without patterns, just by walking around the hobby shop. Get some. Buy a few pieces every now and again and try different things. I put a pink backdrop behind something the other day and photographed it. I couldn't find the picture a while ago, but it totally changed. Even though I desaturated it and darkened it a little bit, you couldn't really tell it was pink. It just was not the same color you're used to seeing behind my pictures, and it made the insect just pop, stand out. So use backgrounds creatively. Think of complementary colors. Maybe even have a color wheel on the wall in your studio where you can look at it and see what would really look good with that shade of orange. Some kind of blue maybe would look good, and go with that. If you're shooting flying insects in the studio now, use light blue backgrounds. Makes people think the thing's flying. You know, it's not rocket science. Well, it is in a way, kind of rocket science. If you're photographing a beetle, maybe a browner, more neutral kind of background would look more natural, or green, a tree maybe. You get what I'm saying. Make it interesting, make it challenging, add different colors, but think of the background as a compositional element. When you're out in the field, carry a few with you from time to time. Remember our friend Pavel, who came in years ago, 5 years ago? It was our first guest, and sharing just beautiful, gorgeous photographs that he was taking. And it was great fun to talk to him. And his routine was to carry with him half a dozen of these large cards that he would frequently use behind the subject. And it made all the difference in the world. Try it. Try it. Okay. Bug prep. Are you ever tempted to skip bug prep because it's difficult or it's time consuming or fiddly, and just photograph the thing because it looks okay to your naked eye? It's just a waste. It's one of two things is going to happen. It's going to be a rubbish picture because your heart wasn't in it. That's why you didn't do the bug prep, in which case, bad picture. Or it's going to be the best picture you ever took, and it's going to have dirt all over it, and you just won't want to show it to anybody. Prep the bug. It'll make you do everything else more carefully in the shoot. If you take the time to get your bug as nice as you can. Croil. I'm not saying that you've got to go out and buy Croil, by the way. It's super expensive. I'm just saying I think that I might be becoming a convert. So think about that kind of thing. But prep your bugs. Pay attention to the details in that too. I mean, I'm always quick to say prep your bugs, but you know that's a loaded tip right there, because prepping bugs is, I mean, that's a large part of what I do, and it's not always the same. I mean, you don't want to wet bees, for example, but we won't get into that now. The jury is still out on whether or not Croil would work on bee fur. I think it probably wouldn't, but I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. So we'll see. But prep your bugs. You'll be glad you did. All right. Enter the competition. That's a tip. You're either too new, you don't think anybody would like your picture, or you would be embarrassed to show a picture because you don't think they're any good. Is one reason you might not do it. You're brilliant and you take fantastic pictures. And this is just a silly little competition that doesn't mean anything because it's just my competition. Bad reasons, both of them. Enter the competition. If you're brand new, it will focus your attention on taking the best picture that you can, and you will get better. You will get better if you enter the competition. If you're great and don't think you need it because that first person needs it. Talked about this already today, but we need to maintain a high standard, and that means our best photographers need to be taking pictures for the competition too. And it's not just my competition, I mean a competition. All right, moving on. Macro rails. Here's the tip, and this is a new tip. This is one that I don't think I've ever said before. Buy an automated macro rail. It will move you further down that learning curve quicker than anything else that you can do in the studio. And I say that as somebody who is absolutely, I would not trade a single day of my hand stacking that I did for 10 years. But still, I know that if I had had an automated rail, and now they're so accessible, they're so affordable, they're not even twice the price of a manual rail, and it will allow you to do things that you couldn't do before. And I just think that the time has come for me to reappraise my position on that. And I think my advice would be, once you've got a macro lens and you're comfortable using it, next thing up is get a wee macro or get a used rail. It makes all the difference. It really does. And the sooner you're taking pictures that excite you, the better your improvement is going to be. I shudder to think how many people take up macro, super excited about it, buy a good rail, a Nisi rail or a Manfrotto rail, and then give up on it because their stacked images just aren't getting there. They're not getting there because there's focus banding in them, there's movement in them, the subject's drifting, because you can't use those things without moving them. There are times to use a manual rail, but when you're learning macro, I don't think that's it. I think if you're serious enough to buy a macro lens, you're serious enough to buy an inexpensive macro rail. Just my thought. Okay. Use reflectors and use flags in the studio if you need them. Think about them, in other words. We don't talk about it enough. I use them every day, and I never think to emphasize how important they are. If you're new and just getting started and you've splurged and bought 2 MF12s, you can double the effectiveness of those 2 little flashes with a couple of reflector cards. And you can make them more accurate with a couple of flags. A reflector card is a piece of white cardboard. It's nothing fancy. You just cut it out of a piece of foam core and you've got it right there. And you use it to bounce light back into your subject from the other side. Your flash is going to cross the subject, hit the board, come back in and provide much less light than the direct flash, but enough to fill that side and chase off the shadows. It makes a big difference. It makes a big difference very quickly. So as you're learning, it's a good idea to use them anyway. But even after you're comfortable doing all the fancy stuff with the flashes, remember that bounce cards have a purpose. You don't always just have to add another flash. You can just put a card in there. All right. Let me see. This is very meta. Keep an open mind. If your initial impulse to a suggestion or an idea from somebody is nah, like that, with that kind of defeated sound to it, that's the wrong answer. It's always the wrong answer. Keep an open mind and try stuff. You might not like it and you won't continue to do it. I get that. There's lots of stuff like that with me. The best example I can think of is the infectious excitement of crystals, which was an absolute couldn't be bothered thing for me until somebody in my camera club showed me enough crystal pictures that I thought, I've got to give this a try. And I did. And I hear almost every day from somebody else who has been a never want to shoot crystals person, who is just thrilled with it and having a blast. They probably, like me, do it for a few months and then periodically pick it up again. But try to avoid that no, I'm just not interested approach, because I think we miss opportunities that can be wonderfully exciting. My big thing now is actually videoing or time-lapsing crystals as they form. I made this one this morning and I left it up on the screen. It's still doing crystal things. It's still growing. It was only a circle when we started. It's a mixture of magnesium sulfate, which is Epsom salts, and oops, sorry about that loud noise I just made, and salicylic acid, which is what's in aspirin. These two together, just a teeny little bit and a drop of alcohol and some water, mixed up and plated out, and that started growing immediately that I put it on the slide, and I've got about 50 dots of it on one slide. I'll show you. There's another one. Whoops. There. And they are so much fun to watch them grow and become more colourful and reorganize and that type of stuff. So anyway, crystals, great fun. There is so much stuff that I now do that I never thought I would, that I was never interested in. It turns out I became very interested in them because you guys were doing them, and I decided I needed to try it. Try stuff, and you'll be surprised. Sometimes it will it'll hit that spot and it'll rekindle your interest. So we have a tendency to want to stay in our comfort zone. The comfort zone is a great place to go for a nap. It's not a great place to find excitement and the thrill of what we're doing. So yeah, open mind. All right, manual focus. Have you met Manuel? Manual focus is crucial, but not everything in field macro. I recommend that people, now these days with Leica and their beautiful lenses, most of their lenses are manual. And obviously to get good with that lens, you have to use it manually. You have to learn how to do that. But I am not a purist in that I suggest that when people are buying a macro lens for their camera, that they get the best macro lens for their camera that they can afford. And that includes having the best autofocus that they can afford. There are reasons for that. Autofocus can be very helpful in bad conditions, and it can help get you in the ballpark quickly as you're learning. I still believe that manual focus is a skill that every macro photographer should have cold. You should absolutely be able to focus manually quickly and accurately, but every now and again you'll find reasons to use auto. In fact, having a lens that can do that will allow you to use features on your camera like focus shift, shooting in Nikon's system, and whatever Canon's is called. It's got a name too. That's what Rick shot that best picture I've seen in a year with. Yesterday was with the Canon's version of that. So manual focus, yes, learn how to do it by all means and be good at it. But bear in mind that autofocus has a place as well. How to word this as a tip. I just wrote down stabilization. Stabilize your camera in the field. Certainly in the studio there's no excuse for it. It absolutely has to be on the most rock solid footing you can put it on. But when you're out in the field, use whatever you need to use to get the most stable platform you can to shoot. That may be one of those floor pods or a monopod or a tripod. I have really made a 180 degree shift in my position on this in the last 5 years. I used to use a tripod, and then I got off it completely because they just weren't doing it for me, and my pictures suffered as a result. Now I'm trying to use it whenever I can, whenever it's appropriate. It's not always appropriate, and you've got a camera like the Z8 and you've got a lens like the MC105 with 7.5 stops of vibration control, that type of thing. You can get away with a lot without a tripod. But if you have a tripod and you're used to using it, it becomes less onerous to have it and use it. And if you're willing to use it more readily, you'll get more good shots. I promise you will. It's just a fact of life that you're going to get more sharp images if you're shooting from a tripod than if you're not. So make yourself think in terms of tripod. Natural light is there for a reason. It's there because otherwise it would be night all the time, like it is in Iceland. So we don't want that. Use natural light when it's available. I bang on about never ever going out in the field without flash, and in my case it's without flash on the camera ready to go. But the reality is the sun does a better job than the flash. Natural light is the best lighting for your field subjects, and you should use it every chance you get. You should also be good enough at knowing when that is not the best option and have an alternative at hand, like your flashes. But when possible, I think the default position should be, as you're getting ready to go out to the field, set your camera up with camera settings for the prevailing conditions light-wise, and if necessary, switch to flash when you get there. But go with the mindset of using the light you've got. All of my best, most of my best field macro shots have been in natural light. It's hard to beat, especially when you have a little bit of overcast. So use it. We spend so much time trying to emulate an overcast sky with our diffusers and multiple flashes and everything like that, when a lot of the time it's actually there. We could just have used it. So think in those terms. Here's a tip. If you live anywhere with outdoors, this excludes people who live on a colony on the moon or something, but for the rest of us, when you go out to shoot macro, wear clothes that cover your body. It is mind-boggling to me that people will go out for a day of macro photography wearing shorts and a short-sleeve t-shirt thing and no hat. That is a recipe for disaster. Or you're doing a different kind of macro than I am. When I'm crawling around in the grass and wriggling around on my belly, the last thing I want is to be getting stung and bitten all the time on my legs and arms, and sunburn and poison ivy and all that stuff. I don't know how anybody can concentrate on their photography under such conditions. So my tip to you would be, get something that has sleeves on it that you can roll down. You'll have less skin cancer. You'll have more fun doing your macro photography. You will use less bug spray because you'll only have to spray right there. And yeah, it's a tip. Use it. It won't make you a better photographer, though. I don't think so. It'll just make you a more comfortable photographer. All right. Temporary habitats. Now this is not strong enough to qualify as a tip, so this won't be one of the 20. But I am definitely moving towards building and using temporary insect habitats in my own living quarters here. I think there are so many opportunities that I have lost over the years in either trying to photograph stuff in its natural habitat or waiting till it's dead and then trying to make it look like it's alive. But there's a whole range in there of natural habitats that you construct that are artificial, and it can be nothing more than a terrarium or a vase with a lid on it. But you can keep insects comfortable and alive for a period of a day or two to get all kinds of great photographs that you couldn't get in either venue otherwise. So one day that will be a tip when I'm more experienced with it, but I'm definitely moving in that direction, and have plans actually to build a habitat for photography, specifically for photography, and that will be a big project for the fall for me. Did I mention that I was rebuilding my macro cage, the cage, the original cage, only out of different materials and with a different drive mechanism and everything? It's going to be fairly complicated, but it's been a year since I've had a complete redo of my platform. But let's make that a tip too. Look at your setup periodically, critically. Look at it every 6 months or a year. Look at it and ask, is it fulfilling all the requirements that I have of it, or am I doing things differently now? Would I like to be able to position my lights more accurately, or is there a way I could get a less vibration prone platform? I would be willing to bet that if it's been 6 months since you had a good look at your indoor shooting arrangement, you'll discover that, there are things that you probably would like to add. So be thinking in terms of improving your platform in the studio. And it doesn't have to be expensive. You can make major improvements that don't cost anything. But if you're not thinking about them, and if you're not, for example, visiting the Cage Project and seeing what other people have done and are doing, if you don't follow Graham Carey's work and look at what he's doing with platforms and lighting and everything, you miss opportunities to improve your own. So visit that every now and again. It's a worthwhile tip. All right. I think I'm over 20, don't you? I've got a few more. Couple more, then we'll take some questions. Be patient. Be patient in everything, but when it comes to macro, I think there is a role for having a macro sense of mind, either when you're going back to your studio to shoot a stack, or packing up your backpack and headed out to the woods. That's the time to pause and slow down and get into that slow mode. I spend 95% of my life in this fast mode to try to get everything done, but my photography suffers when I do that, as I demonstrated earlier. It doesn't ever help to rush in photography, but especially with what we're doing. If you think about it, what defines macro and especially insect photography is details. It's attention to details. We're photographing details on our subjects, and we're doing it with highly technical equipment that requires that we pay attention to every detail of the setup and the management of our gear, of our lighting, of our backgrounds. Everything is detail, and you just can't do detail when you're rushing. So slowing down and becoming patient and waiting for that right shot to appear by being in the right position, it's not easy to do. If you're a type A person, it's very hard to get yourself to become patient, but you can learn it, you can practice it. It's I used to think that doing breathing exercises to slow myself down was the biggest load of hogwash I had ever heard of. I thought it was just nuts, whoever thought of that. Well, it's not. It's really very valuable to take just a few seconds and pay attention to your breathing, and it causes you to start paying attention to other things too. And once you slow down, it's easier to stay in that mode than it is to get into that mode. So I like to do that before I start, and it works for me. It's funny, you'd have to be inside my head, and I don't recommend that at all. But I will be doing whatever I'm doing, 15 things at once, and then I decide I'm going to go get that shot started. And it's like a switch gets thrown, and I walk slower, I talk slower, my movements are more controlled, and when I get back to the back, I'm just moving at a slower pace, and it's a very, very focusing experience. and I highly recommend you try it. It's probably some kind of what do they call it? I can't remember. There's a term for it when you focus on your environment more closely, that the world kind of shrinks back a little bit, and that's what you want. In macro, it's part of the reward of macro. Aside from the photographs, it's the fact that you have to be in that place, and being in that place is a good thing for humans. It works for us. So try it. Learn to be patient. All right. Just a couple more. Post-processing. This is a difficult one because there is no single tip, but do this. Develop a workflow, and develop it by looking at what other people do, talking to other people, watching videos, reading books. But when you come up with a workflow that works for you, stick with it and let it become a routine that you don't have to think about, that you just have to do. And stick with that come hell or high water. There will be times when you're forced into making changes, but generally speaking, when we get away from our workflow that we're used to, that we've learned, is when we make our mistakes. That and when we rush. You'll make far fewer mistakes using a workflow that's the same every time. For me, the biggest benefit of a good workflow in the studio is with test shots. And that will be the specific tip for this, is take and look at your test shots. There's a reason we have them. There's a reason we call them test shots. If you're not doing test shots, how in the world do you know that your lighting's going to be okay? How do you know that you've got the subject framed right? How do you know that it's not going to overlap your frame by the time you get to the end of the stack? You don't know that unless you've taken the shots and looked at them. So the workflow element there that is the most important, I think, of all, is to use the test shot wisely and make decisions based on it. It is not uncommon for me to go to the back and set up a shot like on Willie earlier, take a test shot and look at it and discover that no, I don't like that position. That tip of that antenna is going to draw attention away from the eye. So I'll move it and I'll do another test shot and another and another. It doesn't matter how many you do, but I have yet to take a photograph where I was happy with the test shot and unhappy with the photograph, whereas the opposite of that is true almost every time. It's a surefire way to get better. All right. You know what? We're up to about 25, and we're down to about 5 minutes. I'm not going to... one last one. Tell you what, read the article when it comes out, because it's going to have 40 tips instead of 20, okay? I'll just include all 20 of these, plus the ones I've scribbled in the margins. There is one last tip. If you are not a reader, become one. Read about macro photography. Read about anything that you're interested in. There are so many good books out there that are fun to read, that are exciting for getting you interested in the hobby, and helpful for teaching you new stuff. These are just a couple of the books that I grabbed from my bedside table as I was running up to the front this morning, because they're well-worn texts that I use all the time. Or this is actually a fun book to read. But if you're not reading as a regular part of your routine in macro, start doing so. I mean, it's fun, and it will give you ideas and give you stuff to talk about. And I love it. I don't know where I'd be without my books. So there you go. Boy, that was a lot of tips. Didn't help, did it? No. hearing tips generally doesn't. It's actually trying to implement them in your photography that does. I hope that you heard something in there, some fragment of a tip possibly, that gives you an idea of somewhere that you may be able to improve. I think that it would be a bit of a shocker if there wasn't something in there that you think needs attention. But tell me, what would your tips have been? What would your number one tip have been? Put it in the chat here, and I'll read them as quickly as they show up. But what do you think I missed that needed to be mentioned? Because I'd love to know what that is, so that it can be in the written version of this. John says, help, I'm really struggling to pin subjects before posing. Just keep swiveling on the pin. Oh, glue, John. Demonstration. This is important. It's why I'm going to such lengths to get glue and a pin. All right, John, are you still there? All right, pay attention now. There are two reasons that your pin will swivel when you pin your insect. One is because you pinned the insect without glue, and the other is that you pinned the insect with too much glue. All right, I'm not going to ask you which one you did, but let me switch back to the camera, get a little piece of paper here. Okay, here's an insect pin. Now you're going to pin your insect in almost every case through the center of the thorax from the underside. That's the middle bit between their head and their abdomen. You find it's the heaviest part of their structure, and a pin will usually hold in there. But it's also an exoskeleton, so it's just going to be the pin trying to hold on to the shell of the insect. What you need to do is put a little glue on it. Now let me show you what the trick is to glue. This is 1 drop of cyanoacrylate, super glue. This, let me see if I can get this a bit closer. Hang on, I'm a bit dyslexic when it comes to this. Let me figure this out. It's down there. Okay, all right. This is not enough glue. Did you see that? And my pin didn't touch the glue. I didn't get any glue on it, so that's not enough glue. This is too much glue. You can't see that. There's no way. You'd need a microscope, and I don't have time to hook up the microscope. If you can see a drop of glue on the end of your pin, that is too much glue. What you need is a molecule thick layer covering the pin, still damp, when you skewer the insect. What happens is that was a very useless demonstration of something too small, too far away. When the pin is covered in glue, wet with glue, and you stick it through the skeleton, that glue will be pushed up to the part of the pin where it goes through, and it will not set. Super glue has to set before it will hold, and you just have liquid super glue, which is now going to run down and get on other parts of your bug or stick to your fingers, whatever. It won't hold. If you have no glue, there's nothing to stop it from rotating. But if you have just the tiniest covering, it doesn't accumulate as you stick the pin in, and it sets the instant the pin stops moving. And that is exactly how you pin it. If you do that, Willie the Weevil has been pinned with the same pin for a month and photographed I don't know how many times, 100, 150, and that pin is, until yesterday, has not come out. And it's because you used just enough glue to cover the pin, but not enough to see the glue itself. The most common mistake is using too much. use less and try that. If that doesn't work, get in touch with me and I'll find out if you're using the right pins. If you're using too small a pin, too narrow a pin, like using a 3/0 when you should be using a 0, that will also affect it. You can move up to a larger size if you need to. Boy, I'm just not good at short answers, am I? And there are lots and lots of questions. Angie, great to see you here, Angie. I was talking about you just the other day, actually, and saying that you were the best flower photographer in the world, as far as I know, which is pretty good. Angie uses Studio Flash for all her indoor focus stacking, and it works great for me. Well, there you go. Here's a tip. Don't get hung up on your own opinion, because mine is often wrong, and that's okay. Angie's definitely the best flower photographer I know, and she uses lighting different than I just suggested, so bear that in mind. There are reasons I don't use it, but it's largely to do with the bulk of it. But yeah, it's a preference thing. I'm just giving you my opinion. So glad to see you here, and you're judging this fall, right? Flower competition, September or something, I think we decided. Can't wait. That's going to be fun. Crispy B. If you want really good 10x, you could look for a Zeiss GF Plan Achromat 12.5. It's really good and really cheap. Working distance is only 8 to 9 millimeters, but with huge coverage. Absolutely. There are lots and lots of great sharp optics out there and lots of ways to do it. I was just sharing this one because it was, I just took a picture with it and I was very excited by how well it worked. Short focus gives you more resolution for your magnification. That's the reason that a short focus 10x is sharper than a 5x. In the same, everything else being held equal, but we'll get into that another time. That's a whole hour's talk. So John, you've been making and printing backgrounds in PS using AI. Just type in what you want. You know, it never occurred to me to use AI to do that. I've been doing that myself for years, and that's a brilliant idea. Yeah, so you just tell it, make me an out of focus background with a church and some green foliage, and it does the whole thing for you. Brilliant. I will try that, definitely. What auto rail do you recommend for an ultra beginner like you? John, I would recommend the Wii Macro, absolutely, unless you're a very wealthy man or a very wealthy woman with the name of John. It's possible too, I suppose, but if cost is no object, I would recommend the NovaFlex rail. And if cost is an object, the Wii Macro rail. But honestly, you couldn't go wrong with any of the 3 or 4 major brands. MJKZZ, lovely. StackShot, lovely. They're all so superior to manual focus devices that any one of them you'll be happy with. And have you had any motorized rails fail on you through extended use? Yes, I have. But I'm not going to tell you. It's probably my fault, so I shouldn't say. But you have to understand, I'm using all kinds of rails all the time, and most of the ones that fail are my own that I made myself. So I've not had a problem with any of the big name ones. And yeah, Wii Macro, so inexpensive, so functional, takes great pictures. You'll love it. All right. Well, John, all of the questions were yours. You should just have bought a lesson and do that. It's good. It's good for you. Lessons. That's another tip. Take lessons. Okay, we're out of time. And boy, I enjoyed that. That was good. It was. I know it was all over the place, but that was kind of on purpose. I didn't want to give you a shopping list. But yeah, are you excited about the changes that are coming? I am. I think this feels like a really good time for new stuff. And thanks again to Larry. Thanks to Patrick for everything that he does. Thank you to my Patreon supporters for keeping me in biscuits and and water. That's my diet. It's like ship's biscuits. Yeah, it's all I can eat that keeps for months at a time without going bad in the fridge. So thank you to my Patreon supporters for all of your help over the years, keeping me in business. Much appreciated. If you want to be one of their number, Patreon's the place to go. Alan Wall's Photography is the channel, and they'll tell you how you can help. And that's it. That's it for today. A lot of stuff. Nothing this weekend unless you come for a walk, and nothing till next week. And I don't know what I'm going to do next week. It'll be a surprise for all of us. But Tuesday, I'll be back with Macro Talk at 8 o'clock in the evening. Until then, have a wonderful weekend. And go over to Discord and check out all the exciting stuff that's going on. If you need an invitation, ask one of us. We'll make sure you get one. Whew. I need to wet my whistle. Or have a drink of water. I'll do that now before you can leave. By the way, everybody's dismissed. I'm going to anybody that sticks around with questions. I'll stick around for a while too. But I have a meeting at 3:30. But for the next little bit, I'll stick around and clear up any messages that remain. Alistair just discovered that We Macros are on sale for $2.99 and put a link in the chat. It's wemacro.com/product. I just click on his link, and when you get over there, tell William that Alan sent you, and he'll probably throw in a yacht or something for you. I just ordered some adapters from RAF Camera, and I have to give these guys a shout out because their stuff is so good. I realized I was missing several adapters I needed that have become misplaced, and I ordered several from them today. They're a great company. Use them if you haven't. RAF Camera. Diving Duck Films. That's a very interesting name, and you are welcome. Thank you for coming. And if you're new, if I don't know you by another name, welcome, and do come back. Bud Parrott's here. Good to see you, Bud. Thank you. You've got to be excited about the Croyle conversion that's taking place over here. It's been fun. Nick, greetings. And let me see who else is here. I'm betting Susan is here somewhere. I haven't seen the... Art's here. Art, welcome. Give you a wave. Russ. Michelle. Michelle, thank you for everything you do. Michelle has single-handedly kept Discord alive and running seamlessly for the last 5 years, and she is much appreciated too. If you ever go over to Discord, you'll see her there. By the way, a tip that will be bonus only for the people that are still here is how to make yellow t-shirts. If you would like tips on that, I can give that to you. I washed my t-shirts with a yellow pillowcase. Not on purpose. I didn't realize it would make everything else yellow, but it did. It's embarrassing, and I've worn it twice this week by accident. Okay, Diving Duck Films. I do love that name. Let me see, who else have I not said hi to? Gary's here, and Just Me is here. All the whole crowd is here. I think I saw Mr. Kerry was here too, and I sent you a message the other day, sir. You're probably still trying to read through it. It was a long one, but yeah, let me know what you think. Nick, and now I don't want to miss anybody. Zeno was here, may have already gone, and that's it. Okay, so I am going to, no, let me see. I feel like I'm missing somebody. I said hi to Angie. David, there you go. That's who I missed. David, how are you doing, sir? How's Maine? It's a nice time of the year up there, I imagine. And Ingolf. And Klaus. Klaus, I responded to your message too, sir. I've been good today in getting back on messages. I'd be interested to see if you agree with my response. Crispy B was... saying that MJKZZ doesn't really seem to be in business anymore. How interesting. I mean, he is. He's still over there posting on PMN, and yeah, I've got a friend who's dealing with him right now on something. So I think he still is in business. Don't know that for a fact. Roy, greetings. And who am I forgetting to say hi to? I think I've got everybody. All right. Nick says, everybody's sold on Croyle. You've got to give it a try. Just don't drink it or breathe it. It stinks. Something awful. Let me see. I did say hi to Larry. I must have said hi to Larry. I know I if I didn't, I was remiss. Thanks again, Larry. And I think we're all the way at the top now. You know, you guys chat a lot during these things. I didn't realize that it's been so long since I've been allowed to look at this part that I didn't realize. Wilf, greetings from Vancouver Island. Oh, geez, one of my favorite places in the world. Dan Stanifer is here, which is always good to see. David F. from Western Canada. Diane Batch is here. Greetings. And I think that's it. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. I will see you on Tuesday. And until then, Hembrodian, Pierre, Susan. See, I was going to miss everybody. Even Lance is here. They've probably already gone and never come back because I didn't say hi to them. But I think that was everybody. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend. Make some crystals and follow some tips. See you next week.